Watch Jefferson climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come
on! Is up, Drew Brody's JJ back here on this lovely, lovely Saturday, Jersey Shore edition. Running through the baseball slate. We don't do this often. I think we do the Jersey Shore edition, I don't know, once or twice a year. So buckle the fuck up. A little more rambunctious this morning or this afternoon, depending what part of the globe you're from. Maybe it's evening. Beautiful day today, right? Nice little weather. Smoke has seemingly cleared from the Northeast. So, hopefully everything's okay on the Canada side of things. But at least as far as Northeast is concerned, it looks like the smoke has gotten better. In relation to this slate, some good nuggets for this slate. Got 3 games I bet today. Could also talk some DFS. Obviously, have any questions, concerns, or whatever. But interesting last night. I actually had 2 walk-off wins last night, which it feels like a super rarity, right? To get that to kind of go your way. At least from where I'm sitting anyway. But I think as sports bettors, we all the time are so quick to complain when we lose, but not so much, grab the wins that are those 50-50s that kind of go your way, right? So nice to get a few walk-off wins yesterday. The Phils and the Guardians. Guardians look dead to rights. Christian Javier kind of nuked like in the 5th inning, which brought the Guardians back. Ultimately, positive night from that end, and it's been a good week for me overall, which far and few between, I guess, right? But good stuff last night, and lovely to see my girl Carolina Mukova hanging tight with Iga today. I haven't caught the end of the match. Not sure if she won or lost. I know she was up a break late, I think, in the 3rd set. I'm checking the score now. Yeah, so Iga came back and ended up winning, but super awesome to see Carolina play that well for that long. I've been watching her for quite some time. And, you just kind of, when you watch as much tennis as I do, you kind of, players just look different, right? Like, especially when they're at their A game. Muhova, I've seen her in various ways just look different than other players on tour. But again, she's been riddled with injuries, so it's a shame. But, I truly believe on all surfaces, she's a top 3 player when she's healthy, because she's not even 100%. She doesn't even look 100% in this tournament. But, the fact that she's able to go this far and even steal a set from Swiatek on this surface, to me, is commendable to begin with. But, and then be up a break multiple times in the 3rd. So good stuff all around there. Nice to see her. And, of course, congrats to Iga for winning another clay French Open. Her best service, and she's been phenomenal for quite some time now. And both super young, right? Well, Iga's super young. I mean, Mahova's, I think, 26 now. So obviously is slowly but surely aging. Not that that's old, but in tennis years, especially with someone like her who's had as many injuries as she's had, it just feels like in dog years, right? Quick shout out to the chat. Stoner, J-Ro, Jason, Don Playa. Much respect. Thanks for popping in. And obviously tomorrow I'll be back with the boys talking baseball and then NASCAR again. My favorite sport. LOL. Sports practically a tax write-off for me these days. Just so fucking annoying. What's up, Jake? How's everything? Looking forward to this slate, and then nice relaxing day at the pool. Get a little color. As you can see, I'm kind of like pasty. Interested to get a little bit of color my way, a little bit of vitamin D, as the cool kids say. Insert whatever dick joke you want there. Real quick, you know what I want to talk about before we go into the slate? The baby Gronk situation. I find that so funny for multiple reasons. Like, obviously, it's funny for the sense of the just over promotion of a 10-year-old, and like, look, in one breath, I tip the cap to the father for like creating somewhat of a business, I guess, for the little guy. But it does seem like borderline narcissistic, right, from the father's standpoint. Like, I don't know. It just feels like maybe, again, I read one of his articles, like where he was like talking in a presser, and I was hoping that like he'd be a little more humble about the whole situation, but like couldn't be more the opposite. He talked, I think he briefly talked about how he was this like premier athlete that ran into injuries when he was younger, and he's using it, hoping that his genetics works out for his kid. It just feels like a story that's not going to have a happy ending. But with that said, he's keeping his little kid's name in the media. I just find it interesting how schools, or any for that matter, even like began to entertain the idea of publicizing this kid. It just feel like I think somebody, I don't know if it was Will Brunson or somebody, brought up the Little Giants reference with Spike and his father. Like, it feels very comparable. You wish the kid nothing but the best, and it just, overhyping a kid at that age just seems like how could that possibly go good, right? But then again, maybe that type of stuff will heavily motivate him. But again, at 10 years old, like, do you really have all this motivation inside you? I don't know. You're still maturing and growing up and still want to have fun with your friends. I just find it, like, that whole situation very unique, right? And look at me, like, I'm talking about it, and it's like, when you look at it from a marketing perspective, this dude's like proclaiming to be like the Gandhi of marketing, the father. But like, I just look at it like, it doesn't feel like it has many good ways to end, right? I mean, genetically speaking, I don't know what his dad even looks like, but if the dad's not 6'5", like, the kid already has a glass ceiling on him in terms of his upside. But yeah, it just feels super weird. And Jason, you bring up a decent point with LeVar Ball. At least LeVar Ball's kids were like already like pretty highly touted, like when he started to spew his nonsense. And they were at least, I think, of 16 or 17. So it's like, and a lot of people disagreed with him too. But again, another guy that kind of found his way from a bad publicity standpoint to I mean, famous is maybe too strong a word, but to earn notoriety, right, in its own way. So yeah, I feel for that situation, because it just feels like a burning bridge. But overall, as long as the dude can sustain himself some cash flow for his son, you never neglect the work ethic of somebody, promoting their son. You just hope more people would do it in kind of the way that Tiger Woods' dad did it. And not to pick up a touchy subject per se, but that was like all behind closed doors for years. And then, Tiger Woods just kind of got released into the wild and was the best golfer ever. You just kind of wish that stuff was more private, but we do live in this world of a need for external validation. And it's kind of crazy. Where we've come in that regard, right? It's like, but it's like the saying, right? And I try to send this message whenever you can, just be yourself. We live in this world of so many fake people and two-faced folks. And I'm not saying that didn't exist years and years ago. It's just like over magnified now. Let people hate you for who you are instead of loving you for who you're not. I forgot where that saying came from. I didn't make it up, but it's true. So many people are trying to be something they're not, to prove something to other people that they shouldn't be anyway. Be yourself, whatever it is that means to you. Genuine humans, man, they're far and few between these days. Be yourself, whatever that means to you, and fuck everybody else and their opinions. Everybody's got opinions on what you should and shouldn't be. And I know we're going down a rabbit hole here, but it's just kind of fucking annoying watching the world around us and all these people consistently trying to be something that they're never going to actually be. The fake it till you make it crowd. But yes. Either way, enough of the TED Talk nonsense. Let's talk some baseball. What's up, Daniel? Finally a show can shine without holding on a show. Yeah, it's tough sledding with him, right? It's like it just kind of like brings you down a whole notch, right? You get fired up when you don't have anything to even be fired up about. Like, my resting heart rate before a show at Holden is like 58, and then 3 minutes into the show, my resting heart rate's like 130. Kind of the effect he has on people. So take that for what it's worth. Todd Marinovich. That's a good point, Jake. Strive for your own personal excellence, not outside validation. Easier said than done in this age where, you log into any type of social media account and all you see is, there's these over glorified individuals, right? And who knows what their real life's like, but certainly promoting a life that's better than average. But, all things considered, just be yourself, folks. I promise you, you'll be happier being yourself. And if you could just ignore the ignorant white noise around being yourself, you'll be far happier. All right. So let's move on to this slate, right? So first game, Tigers D-backs. And I will admit, I do like how they did this slate today. I've definitely had my fair say of comments or remarks around how they do these slates where like they do 1 o'clock game, like 9 4 o'clock games, and then like 5 7 o'clock games. At least today they kind of scattered it a little bit more. At least in the early afternoon with some more games. And granted, we still have our handful of 4 o'clocks, but I get that too, right? You got a UFC card and whatnot and other things to compete with at night. So I get it. But I do like what they did here. You got a little more early games and before we get to the 4 o'clock. So first game up on the slate, Tigers D-backs. I do not like ESPN for whatever reason. Sorry about that, guys. The Matthew Boyd, small underdog against the Diamondbacks with Ryan Nelson. Ugly game, but I will say this: total of 9 at this park in not super humid weather would make one lean to the under. Again, I don't love this spot. I think this line's actually relatively fair in a few regards. Like, there's no reason the D-backs shouldn't be favored in this spot, right? They've looked the part thus far, and while we figure they'll fizzle at some point, Ryan Nelson hasn't been great for them either. So the small favorite does make sense because Boyd's been tough to watch too, and D-backs certainly have plenty of righties that can get to him. But as far as the total goes, call it a slight lean under at 9, just because a park factor, if you will. This park does not play small when weather's not super humid. Now, granted, again, you have 2 bad arms, but keep in mind, as I often say, you can't just look at a game, oh, these 2 arms are terrible, I'm just going to bet the over. Always realize that the number is inclusive or included with, of course, the starting pitching and the bullpens, right? But I do think this number is slightly high. And maybe if you wait a little longer, maybe, because I'm seeing some steam, maybe you can find the 9.5 under, to me would be a decent look. At -1, call it -115 or better. I just don't know if you're going to get there specifically. You might, though. Might be some late oversteam that comes in. But again, call it a slight lean under at 9, stronger lean at 9.5. But it's a pass for me. Next game up, White Sox Marlins. So Michael Kopech, some people say, against Sandy Alcantara. What has happened to Sandy Alcantara? It's like, do you attribute some of it to be bad luck? Do you attribute some of it to be, just a small enough sample where you can't overlook it? I will say, just based on the line alone, this is your typical buy low spot on a guy like Sandy. Now, the problem is it was also a buy low spot on Sandy his last start. But I do think, wasn't there some errors? Am I thinking of him or the wrong guy? I know he gave up, I think, 4 runs. I just don't know if they were all earned. I guess it doesn't matter. Either way, he's not pitching confidently. Now, he sees the White Sox today, and we always know, like, I think the big difference with Alcantara is, I don't want to say he's always struggled with lefties because that's not fair. He's been good against lefties, but he's a little worse against lefties this year than he's been. But the big staggering thing is he's been slightly average against right-handed bats, and slightly average for a guy like Alcantara says a lot because he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball against right-handed bats. So this year, it's just been super weird to see him struggle with right-handed bats and walks, and the strikeouts are down. It's interesting, but like you look at his velo and stuff, it's not like crazy. Maybe some mental aspect to it, and that doesn't get talked about enough in sports, right? But could be also dealing with a slightly lingering injury, right? You never know when that type of stuff comes out. But man, does this feel like a good buy low spot for Alcantara. Reason I didn't do it was because Michael Kopech, super highly touted prospect years back, dated that Brielle Benson kid or daughter of one of the shows. I forgot what show that was on E or one of those shows. Really cute chick. I forgot her name. Now he's obviously dating somebody else, but the kind of began his like claim to fame early on. And the problem I have with betting Alcantara here is Kopech has looked really good, right? Now I could start saying, oh, well, maybe we bet the under at 8, but I think it was 8.5 at one point, and I'm seeing 8.5 -120. I know it was 8.5 -110 earlier this morning, so it doesn't surprise me that Steam's coming in on the under. The problem I have with these two pitchers is when they've gotten eaten up or blown up, like they've gotten blown up. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if one of these two starters has a bad outing. Kopech has been good recently, but that's kind of why I'm saying maybe it's a good buy low, sell high spot on Kopech and Alcantara here at a happy medium. But I would have liked to see this price be a little different. But again, not strong enough for me to fire on this game, but I do think there's enough merit to want to bet Alcantara in this spot. Maybe you go first five. White Sox bullpen started the year terribly, but it's kind of been rounding out a bit. So at the price, slight lean, Marlins. Looks like minus 105. Yeah, so slightly Marlins. Not in love with that. You can get minus 104 at FanDuel if you're into pennies of savings. But it's kind of where my head's at there. I never fade a guy like Alcantara pitching poorly. So that's not going to happen. But I do think there's some merit to back him. If you'd like. What do you think of Marino, Walker, mini stack? So for DFS, right? So I guess my question for you, because it is relevant, right? Where are you going to mini stack that? In the all days, in the earlies? Like where? If you could just answer that for me, Jay, because it matters, right? So like when you say a mini stack, is it an all day slate that you're entering? Is it an early only slate? What does the slate look like? I ask that because in an all day aspect, I love it. In an early only slate, I don't as much because I think that everybody's likely going to be doing that in an early only slate. But I do really like it in an all day slate. So I hope that answers your question in certain regards, because I do think that little mini stack that you're referencing is going to see some decent ownership, and you're always trying to leverage ownership versus projection. So I hope that makes sense. All right, let's move on to the next game. Cardinals red. So I did fire here. Miles Mikolas gets to face Andrew Abbott, and I don't even know. I don't even know what to make of Andrew Abbott. I know he's been good. He was okay in AAA too. Why I like the Cardinals in this spot, first five, lay and a half run, minus 120, is because Miles Mikolas was getting ridden off by a lot of people earlier in the year, along with a lot of other Cardinals starters. And if you notice for me with the Cardinals, when I like to zig and zag with them, is I don't necessarily like to fade them when they're going through cold streaks, but I do like to back them when they kind of find themselves. Now winners of 2 straight. They came out yesterday, scored 5 runs early. I think this is another targetable pitcher, a lefty, that the Cardinals can take advantage of. And I look at this lineup, looks strong from the Cardinals. And I know that the Reds have a lot of these fun names, young guys. Ellie De La Cruz is another one of them, huge prospect, and Will Benson. And this team is on the come up, if you will, but they're clearly not there just yet. And the Cardinals, I still believe this team will go on a decent run. They went on a decent run weeks back and then just kind of fell, started playing 50-50 ball and then lost 6 straight again. So it's like they just can't figure themselves out. But this spot start in particular, man, this feels like at least 25 to 30 cents off. I get why Abbott's getting respect. He's been pitching well in his small instances. And again, he wasn't bad in AAA either, but Mikolas, it feels like just a guy that can eat up this lineup. He's been pitching confidently. And while, he could have a bad start in theory, this is just a really good spot for these Cardinals sticks. And I look at this line and it's half a run, right? And I'm getting them a much better lineup against a lefty. I'm getting a better starter and I'm home. I just love the spot, and I get why the Cardinals aren't getting respect again, or much respect in my eyes. But to me, this is your typical 190, 200 type of spot for the Cardinals, and it's just not, right? So I think there's some buy. I don't say buy low, but buy kind of low on the Cardinals here, while the Reds are still kind of trendy, if you will. So I really like laying the half run with the Cards here. So that's what I fired on, minus 120. Maybe you could wait. Maybe that line comes down a bit. Might get some red steam, maybe. But I liked it at 120. Feel like that should be like minus 135, all things considered. So grab that 15 cents in our favor. How about a De La Cruz dong bet? Can't mind that at all, Danny. The kid's super fun to watch. So no, can't mind that at all. But again, remember when you're making home run bets, I mean, look, it's one thing to make stands, right, and try to have some fun with gambling, right. But always keep in mind, like the home run props are typically like 24 to 25% holds on that market. So like when you're right, or like when you want to take your stabs, like make sure you're at least price gauging the market where you're finding the best price you can get on home run props, because it's obviously not exaggerating as like the golf outright market, but like, man, there are sometimes like 400 or 500 cents of swings with pricing on home run props. And then that doesn't even include like odds boosts and whatnot. So just level head yourself on that regard. But no, I don't mind it. I don't mind the spot, obviously. But again, just make sure you're not, just handing away vig with those types of bet. Yeah, I mean, another two big names mentioned, right? I'm sorry, Encarnacion Strand. The Reds just have a ton of prospects, right? So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think I saw him in the lineup today, so not yet. But I do expect him to see um, to see time at some point in the very near future. The Reds are pretty stacked in terms of prospects that are ready to go. All right, so we'll move on to the next game. Blue Jays Twins. It looks like it's still undecided for the Jays, which makes the game hard for me to really pick a side. I know that they have a line published of pick 'em, but maybe Trevor Richards, possibly. So don't totally mind that. The problem is like Joe Ryan's been kind of coming back to earth recently. I thought he pitched pretty well actually in his last start against the Guardians. We faded him with McKenzie, but it felt kind of fortunate there to grab that win late with McKenzie, especially since he was out of the game. He didn't even get credit for the win. But the Jays have been playing good ball, right? And Joe Ryan has recently had some home run woes. I'd even argue the ball that he gave up to Josh Naylor last week. I mean, shit, that should have been gone. Like that missed a home run by like 2 feet. He has been playing with fire, and now he plays a Blue Jays lineup that has a ton of firepower. Just feels like a day where he might give up a dong or two, and we'll. But the problem is not like Trevor Richards is anything to write home about. So, but the line makes sense to me. Joe Ryan deserves to be a slight road favorite in this spot, or even a pick 'em. But again, he's just not somebody on my radar right now to target in a betting perspective. Possibly fade in the right sense. Just don't think this is the right spot to fade him. Line makes sense. Total makes sense. So easy pass. Rockies, Padres, Kyle Freeland going up against, what's his name, Ryan Weathers. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a Freeland guy, crafty lefty, doesn't overpower you with anything, but he definitely has a good amount of stuff and a good amount of movement on pitches, and he's smart. Line's low though here, right? Like, and that's probably more because of the lack of respect for Weathers, but that is a small line in favor of the Padres. And whenever you bet these types of spots, like you have to ask yourself, how many times in a given season are you really going to get the Padres at this short a number in Colorado? So yeah, I don't find value on the Rockies. They could win, but I don't see value there. Slight value on the Padres, but I like Freeland, so call it a bias going in. So it makes the game practically unbettable for me. Total of 12. Some people might get scared off by that number, but again, this is Coors. It's going to be warm. Let me just see what we're looking at temperature wise for that park. Looks like 70, so maybe not that warm. But again, you have two, mid arms. Could definitely get there. I know yesterday it got there, I think. So just overall stay away spot for me. I think the total's fair. I think the line's fair. So we'll move on. Excuse me. Orioles, Royals. Man, did I really want to bet this game under. I looked at this from a bunch of different angles. I just could not pull the trigger on it. Seeing 9.5 now, minus 120 makes it a little more even appetizing. But man, like I look at two pitchers who, no doubt about it, will have lower ERAs than where they currently stand by year end. Brady Singer is a guy that can get outs against righty heavy lineups. But he also walks too many guys, which creates a bit of a problem. Cole Irvin is kind of the same thing. Let me just pull up what this park's going to be. I'd assume another game that's going to be around 75, 80 degrees. But the reason why I wanted to bet this under is because this park is just not a park these days that should really be carrying this type of total. But you're looking at a game that's going to be 85 degrees with wind blowing to right center. And it scared me, right? It scares you off when you have two susceptible arms that walk more guys than they should and give up more home runs than they should. It makes it tough. But yes, at 9.5, especially with the O's pen being, slightly above average, the Royals pen being not a total disaster. I lean this game under 9.5, just from a progression coming for both pitchers standpoint. But couldn't fire on it. I've got myself into trouble too in these types of games where, from a progression to the mean standpoint and a market saturation standpoint, and I've already talked on the progression to the mean, but a market saturation standpoint where this is going to be a game where a lot of folks line up to bet this game over. And that's why it's pumping to 9.5. But again, from a park factor standpoint, from a progression to a mean standpoint, this line feels like it should be slightly under 9, not 9.5. But again, I've got myself into trouble targeting these types of games. So I just stayed away. But I could be convinced into either side. But yeah, Baltimore KC under to me makes a lot of sense. This also would not be a game I would stack on the DFS end with bats. You're going to get a decent amount of ownership probably on both sides. But no love for me there with bats. What's up, Greg? Long time no see. And I don't mind that. Again, I was talking on the over in that game. Don't mind that at all. Feels a bit fair at 12.5, but I can't mind that at all. Yeezy, my guy, what's up? Then Nolan Jones been great. It's been up. Yeah, same there, Jay. They just got a ton of good stuff there. Bets Turner, two bases parlay. Yeah. Nothing wrong there. And the fact that they're letting you parlay player props like that in a consistent market. Take advantage of what you can. And yeah, Don, the Baltimore KC game is where I'm referencing the lean under. Phillies Dodgers. So this is a game I also fired on. So I was on the Phillies last night. I think this team has now won 6 in a row. It's either 5 or 6 in a row. But they're kind of feeling themselves. This line is now a pick 'em. I think the Dodgers were road favorites, but they're not anymore. When the Dodgers were road favorites, I did fire on the Phillies first 5. Now I don't know if this line exists anymore. And it is relevant, so I just want to make sure that it does before I even say it. Oh, it's even better now. Fuck, it went the other way. So on FanDuel, the first 5 money line for Phillies is -110. I actually got it at -115, and I felt pretty confident that was going to move. So FanDuel at -110, first 5 behind the Phillies. I really like that bet. I'll talk about why I like it in a moment. And DK, it's -115 still. So now the reason why I like it is Aaron Nola is another arm that's kind of found himself recently. He's been pitching relatively well. And Bobby Miller from LA, right? We talk all the time on how LA figures pitching out, and they end up, everything works out if you're pitching in an LA Dodger uniform long term. However, I don't trust anything I've seen from this kid. He was below average in AAA. He comes in, he pitches a spot start well against the Braves. I think then he gets the Nationals and forgot what other team he was fortunate to start against. Maybe the Yankees. But yeah, ultimately, I don't trust him at all. I think, first of all, from a momentum standpoint, the Phillies are just kind of feeling themselves right now, right? And they're seeing the ball really well. And I think it makes a ton of sense for them to get to this kid Miller today, especially early. And Nola's just been pitching well. Now, as far as why I didn't want to go the full game, the Phillies could keep up this winning streak. But there's a big difference between the Dodgers pen and the Phillies pen in relation to top arms. And yes, when you look at statistics, Phillies have a better bullpen ERA, but that's kind of smoke and mirrors because if the Dodgers are trying to close a game out late, they have much better pen arms than the Phillies. So I'm not looking for this to be a game where Philly leads early and then blows a lead late. Granted, the opposite could happen and really jam it up my ass, but I prefer back in Nola first 5. Feels like a great price. And when you talk on momentum as well, I like the backing of Philly, and I think it's a perfect storm with Bobby Miller out there who's pitched a few good starts in a row, and will face a tough lineup today. So yeah, I really like the Phillies first 5, so that was what I fired on. Yeah, Atlanta was that first start, J-Ro. I like first 5 under 4.5. So Don, just so I'm clear, which game are we talking? The Dodger game, the Philly game? If you're talking the Philly game, call me indifferent at best there. I don't yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if this game was 2-0 after 5 or 2-2 after 5, but it also wouldn't surprise me if this game was like 5-3 after 5. You just have live sticks from both teams, right? And it's warm in Philly. We know how that ball carries in that park. So you're talking 85-degree day in Philly where it's going to feel like 90. Are you going to get wind blown out too? Let me just see. I mean, you're not getting that wind blowing out, which is nice, but it's still super warm in that park, and that ball just carries. So it just becomes an easy stay away for me. What are your thoughts on McKenzie versus Astros with no Jordan? So I'll get to that game if you don't mind. We got 3 other games in between. I'll get to that game, or 4 other games in between. Pirates Mets. This was the easiest pass on the board for me. The Mets are playing like absolute dog shit, and they're going to keep being favored every day, and they just keep losing. I don't know. It feels like in some breaths there's probably some value on the Pirates, but again, I don't know. In what world do you think plus 105 with the Pittsburgh Pirates versus a good arm for the Mets is good value? So no there, but I can't back a team that I think's now lost 7 straight games. You'd figure the Mets will figure themselves out at some point, but man, it has been weird, very weird with them, especially on the road. So no, I want no part of this game. It's an easy pass. Brewers Athletics. This is one of the more intriguing games for me of the slate that I did not bet. Julio Tehran. Oh man, he's pitching well, but at what point does that fake it till you make it type shit stop? Kudos to him for pitching well, finding ways to get outs, but man, this dude's got blow up starts coming. The Athletics are now starting to get a little trendy, and I know that sounds kind of crazy. The Athletics have scored, I think, 4 runs in 6 straight games. They are hitting, and they are hitting early. Some could argue maybe for some value on the Athletics because of how well they're hitting. I don't know about that specifically, but I do know that they have been literally smashing the baseball, a ton of hits. So call this a slight lean over on this total. It has been steamed up, I think, to 9.5. But that over is really because of, just kind of insinuating that you get your runs from your Athletics today. But Julio Tehran has really been stepping in shit lately. And another situation where I've gotten myself into trouble, kind of like rooting for regression, right? And Tehran has been pitching confidently, and he's just not a guy I'm looking to fade. I faded him on Sunday. It bit me in the ass. I'm not going to fade him until he starts to show regression. It could start here, but I don't know. Not really my cup of tea. So stay away. It's intriguing because of the Athletics. You will see this often with really bad teams. Same with really good teams in the opposite way. Really bad teams finding their sticks for a few weeks. The Athletics are kind of in that area right now where they're finding their sticks, and really good teams at times will lose their sticks. I just think if you're lining up to bet minus 200 on Tehran today, you're a bit out of your mind, just because you want to talk about buy low, sell high. I mean, Jesus, you are buying Julio Tehran stock at fucking peak price if you're backing him today at minus 200. So granted, it could work out for you, but no thank you on my end, especially with how the Athletics have been hitting. So that becomes a pass spot for me, and I'm just not in the mood to fade Tehran, so that's why I'm staying away. Rays, Rangers. The good old Nathan Eovaldi sees Taj Brad. Taj Brad has been okay, right? Nothing to write home about. Nathan Eovaldi, I don't know what this dude's doing different. Maybe drugs, because you look at his velo, it's like about the same, but he has been unbelievable. He just eats innings. He doesn't get himself into trouble. His Ks are up. It's just it's a good story, right? And here, I don't know. I'll tell you this. I haven't made a lot of money fading the Rays this year, so I'm not doing that. But Rangers are quietly 40-22. It's phenomenal, right? And Eovaldi's a pretty decent reason why. Pitching really well in every one of his starts. He's just arguably been the most consistent pitcher in baseball this year. So kudos there. This line feels very fair. It's not very often you're going to get the best team in baseball in the Rays at home, and it's a pick 'em, right? So it shows there's a lot of respect for Eovaldi. So I don't necessarily think you're getting this crazy value back in Eovaldi today. But with that said, game's a pick 'em, fair line. Just stay away from me. Braves Nats, another easy pass for me. Just feels like a spot where the Braves are overly pumped as a favorite with a mid arm at best in Jarrett Schuster. Mackenzie Gore's been okay. Pitcher that feels like regression's coming. Anytime you throw a lefty at this Braves lineup, though, good fucking luck. Warm weather in Atlanta. Ball's going to carry. Just a lot of factors here, moving arrows in different directions for me. Easy pass. Now I'll get over to the Tristan McKenzie start against JP France. Wow, did I feel like I stepped in shit with the Guardians win yesterday. It's not many times this year with the lack of Guardians bats that they're going to go down 4-0 against a good team and win, and then fight back multiple times in extra innings. So I feel like I just wanted to avoid this Guardian game altogether. It just felt like, again, really stepped in shit yesterday. But I will say this much, like this line is an awful lot of respect for Tristan McKenzie. If you guys remember, his last start where I backed him, he was a home slight underdog against Joe Ryan, right? What are we doing now that he's minus 140 against the Astros? I get it. JP France has regression coming, but like, man, that just feels like a huge swing in one start. I guess based on these factors alone, one would think I like the Astros as an actual bet, and I kind of do. But I wish the price was a little better just because the Astros went through a big part of their pen, and I have some concerns over the other parts of their pen where I do prefer the Cleveland pen. McKenzie will likely be on another pitch count, call it 80 pitches or so. But yeah, this does feel like an overreaction line. So yeah, slightly in Astros. If it gets up to like plus 125 or plus 130, like, yeah, that's definitely worthwhile of a bet on the Astros. But yes, I will stay away from this game unless it gets there. But I do find this line very, very interesting. And it feels like a start overreaction line. And remember, you do look for numbers. We got McKenzie as a home dog last week. He pitched really well. Great. But this spot seems very similar. And now the line's moved up, 50 cents? These are trends you need to look for. And again, this line moves a little further. I'm likely going to back the Astros. Yankees, Red Sox. Speaking of an interesting line, Tanner Houck has gotten me into trouble a bit this year. I think I've backed him two different starts, not close to one another. I really like the Red Sox first five here. I do believe so. Aaron Judge is out for the Yanks, right? And that matters. I know he's only one guy, but that matters. I look at this as Tanner Houck has actually pitched really well this year. He has been very, very unlucky, to say the least, as a starting pitcher. Now, granted, I don't chase progression, and I've backed him in sparingly starts this year. But man, this feels like a good spot. The Yankees watered down lineup, a guy that's been, again, just incredibly unlucky. I mean, left on base percentage of 60%. He's striking out about 9 per. He's not giving up a lot of hard contact. His advanced numbers are slightly better than Domingo Germán. He's good against batters on both sides of the plate. And you just look at the advanced numbers of both these guys, and Houck's been better. He just has, right? So I know I'm getting the better starting arm, or based on advanced metrics I am. I'm definitely getting the better lineup with the Red Sox. And the only thing I have to sacrifice is being on the road. So I really like the Red Sox first five here, money line. I think that they're going to get themselves some foot traffic today against Germán. And if Houck can maybe get some luck on his side, this might be an easier win than thought. But I have respect for the Yanks pen, so I didn't want to touch this. And I know the Red Sox won a close game yesterday where they taxed their pen. So another spot where I prefer the first five, and that's where I went. And in DFS, I'll be honest, I don't know his price for all-day slates. I don't have that in front of me. But I would not mind Tanner Houck today. I think there's just good stuff there. Let me just pull up his price real quick just to see if it's even worthy of merit, because obviously the price matters, right? So I just can't imagine how this guy would be priced like bad, right? It's an all-day slate. I fucking didn't pick an all-day slate. I picked the early tough scene. Well, anyway, you guys let me know his price if you have it. I think there might be some good value there on Tanner Houck today. Any for under first five you like? I mentioned some leans, Don. Nothing I actually fired on though. I can't disagree there, Greg, with Evaldi being bet. Again, you just look at it. You try to take a step backwards sometimes on numbers, and it's not like it's not like there's going to be many times this year where the Rays are a home pick 'em, right? So, but I did fire Boston first five, Greg. So like that as well. And you being a Yankee fan, right? You're on my side too. So I'm glad that we're kind of speaking the same language. 2 games left, Giants, Cubbies. Kyle Hendricks goes for the Cubs, and he's a decent-sized dog against John Brebbia. I am not a Brebbia guy, but I'm also not a Hendricks guy. This pushes me to lean over on this total. Hendricks on the road is a bit of a mutt. The problem why I don't like this over is because this is one of the biggest pitchers parks in baseball, and it will not be warm tonight in San Francisco. This total is 8.5. Feels like a pretty big total for this park. So to me, it's correct. And as far as the numbers go, I don't know, some slight value on Hendricks. I just hate targeting him on the road. He's just been throughout his entire career. He's had awful road splits, so makes the game easily avoidable for me. Last but not least, Angels, Mariners. My guy, Pablo Sandoval, slight favorite against Brian Wu. Now, Wu, decent prospect, right? Gets brought up very recently. Got shelled against Texas. Take that for what it's worth. Maybe nerves, maybe not. I don't know. But actually, I think if I remember correctly, this was the game my dad bet Andrew Heaney, where he laid the first 5 with Heaney. And my dad made a good point, right? It's like, you either when you want to target guys making their MLB debut, you should always be in the same quadrant, if you will, right? Or maybe quadrant is not the right word, but you should always be in the same mindset, right? Like you're either somebody that always likes to target pitchers making their debuts because maybe you feel like they're just never going to get the amount of respect they deserve in the marketplace, or you are one of those people that just likes to fade starters making their MLB debut because you're somebody who uses the mental aspect of the game where more nerves than usual, all this extra pressure around you, probably not a lot of sleep the night before, right? So my dad always has taken the stance of fading pitchers like Brian in their first start. Problem is this is not his first start. He's gotten his feet wet. He's felt what it feels like to pitch in the majors, and he is going to get another tough start here. Pablo Sandoval has been a guy that started the season very poorly, kind of rounded into form. If you guys remember, when I saw his numbers terribly earlier in the year, I said, look, I'm a Pablo Sandoval guy. He likely figures it out. He has began to figure it out. Tough spot, though, right? Mariners have enough righties to really cause some damage. And if Brian Wu pitches to his caliber, I'd argue for some value on the M's here. I know that the Angels won yesterday. They taxed their pen. Ohtani pitched okay. He also hit a homer for him. But I just look at it yesterday, right? Like you had Ohtani at -120 against the Mariners ace in what's his name? The kid from the Reds, Luis Castillo. And now the Angels are even bigger favorites in a spot where I'd argue it's basically identical. Like the spot to me is identical to yesterday in terms of the caliber of pitching from both and how it equals out overall, right? Because I would argue that Ohtani was slightly, I guess depends who you ask, right? But Ohtani's slightly better than Luis Castillo. Line didn't really indicate that much, and it closed at -120. Today, Sandoval might be slightly better than Wu. Tough to say, but is it worth an extra 10 cents in the line? It's probably going to close at 135, right? Because, I can't imagine people are going to line up to bet Seattle today, especially after they lost that close game yesterday. But I do think if you were somebody that liked Wu in his first start, I think you have to love him in this start because Sandoval's a guy that can get hit up by righties. And if you are a guy that liked Wu or likes Wu because you like of how his stuff will project at the major league level, I think this is a better price this week than you got last week, and I think you should target the Mariners here. That's just my thoughts. Okay, so that wraps up the slate. Went a little longer than I'd like to have. Where do we go? Almost 45 minutes. I guess not terrible. But look, weather's nice today in most parts of the globe, U.S. specifically, in terms of warm weather and whatnot. But I hope you enjoy the warm weather. I know we've had some weekends recently. So whether whether you're enjoying yourself at home alone, jerking off all day, or whether you're out with family and friends, whatever it is, enjoy your version of quality of life. And look, in relation to the bets, I gave out 3 bets today. I hope obviously they all hit, but time will tell. I will see you guys tomorrow. Again, talking baseball at 12 with Holden, Joey, and potentially Gary, and then NASCAR with Coop after as well as we've always been, right? Consistency is key. But look, with all that said, gamble responsibly today, folks. Stay safe. And as always, run pure. See you guys tomorrow.